live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 85 of the Forgetful Home Games podcast. I'm Yazeed, who forgot all of the equipment, and this is Joseph.
Hello, I'm Joseph, and today is July 5th, 2021. Today we're talking about some infrastructure stuff, basically just general infrastructure updates and things like that from me. And then I had some work on the locker service I had been talking about previously, what is it, sensitive data. I was about to say confidential data, but sensitive data storage stuff for home games. And then Yazeed has some complaints about me.
Kinda, yeah.
Cool. Let's I guess get started with the complaints. That sounds fun.
This is more of like a rapid fire question than anything else.
Well, let me give some background. So the notes here for people who are maybe wondering what I'm talking about. The notes just say linter with a question mark, implying we don't have a linting set up. We do, we just don't use it. The next one is issues with old README. Wrote that like Christmas 2018, so I get it. The next one is clean up a little, question mark. I would cross out that little and say a lot, so maybe we're on the same page there. And then the next one is model PR, but for real.
Yeah.
So we'll walk through this. Just wanted to give some context.
That is true. I'll start with the model PR. I forgot. I've just been forgetting to put this thing out, and it's just like every time I'm like, oops. But yeah, so I'll put that out for realsies. But the thing I was talking about was, so looking through the code.
Yeah.
I noticed some stuff.
Yeah.
I saw some things. I saw some things, some lines have spaces at the end of them. Some lines don't.
Yeah.
Some objects, the first curly brace is a space after it. Sometimes the last one has a curly brace. Sometimes both of them do, but oftentimes only one of those two are true. I guess my question here, and this is what I meant by it's kind of a rapid fire question is what do you think of linters? And also, should we use one?
We do have an ESLint config in Homegames core, and my view towards linters is that it is great if you have a defined style as a team. You say we want spaces instead of tabs. We want spaces to be 2 instead of 4. We want curly braces on this line or whatever, things like that. We've never sat down to define that stuff, so I kind of just put in some basics of what I thought made sense in the ESLint config. And for the most part, you and I haven't really been touching the same code. So to me, it's kind of like, well, I know what this is. I don't need to run auto fix ESLint, whatever, so it'll fix my white space stuff, because I don't, it's not that I don't care, it's I don't care yet. I don't care at the moment. But you're right. We should have a more consistent style thing across the board, just to make things more accessible for people. If we have different styles across the code base, it just wouldn't be ideal. Okay,
yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe you were morally opposed to linters.
No,
because based on your code, I was like, this man might be morally opposed to linters. No, okay, yeah, I was just curious about that, because when I was looking at it, I was like, I don't know which style is actually the ones I'm supposed to go with. I will say that I'm, what's the word? Not agnostic. I'm indifferent. I will adapt to any linting rules that you put in, because I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I've never been a person who's super hardcore on people's formatting. As long as I kind of know what's going on and it's consistent, that's the biggest thing, is that it's consistent. That's why you and I have had conversations before about why I like Python so much. It literally won't run if it's not the way it's supposed to be. So I do like that. But like I said, it's just not a priority in my head. I was thinking also something about what you mentioned months ago at this point about just type safety and adding TypeScript, just to add some sort of static analysis to our process, and to basically make everything better. It's you're probably right, but kind of my thing with all these bullet points that we'll probably talk about is that I fully agree it's important. It's just that the priority stuff is maybe not the highest in my head.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious, because I was like, what's going on here? No, it was fine. I mean, I could read it, I could get through it. I just wasn't sure if when I'm writing code, what's the styling I should follow. All I remembered was that you use spaces instead of tabs, and I was like, Roger, I remember that.
It's true, but that's only because that's what I used first, and it made the most sense. So I'm not super stuck on anything, and I've written most popular languages at the moment. I kind of I can get used to whatever. Kind of like what you said, you know, what you can adapt.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
I mean, that's the thing about, like, that's why I wasn't, like, super hard up on it. I was like, I don't even know if we had a linter. I didn't look. I was like, this isn't, like, it's not, like, failing. It's not, like, giving me a warning even. So I was like, okay, all right. Because, like, normally, like, at my work, VS Code will be like, this is wrong. Right. And it's like, oh, why is it wrong? It's like, you failed linting. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm sure if we had, like, an integration or something with your IDE to look at that ESLint, and then do that, I'm sure I could do that with Vim. I think that's the other problem is that I, like, 80% of the code that you see in Homegames, I wrote in Vim. And, like, I'm terrible with Vim, and that's always been my thing, is that I enjoy using Vim, but I'm trash at it. And so I don't have, like, good plugins to make sure that I can use the same things that I would be used to in Sublime. Mm-hmm. It's harder to type in, and that makes me feel better about myself. So I do that, and then my output's worse, and it takes longer to get it. But I'm happier about it. So
that makes sense. I do like the idea of using Vim, but at this point, like, VS Code gives me so much utility out of the box. I'm just like, you know what? I'll leave my love for Vim on the side. I'll just use VS Code.
Yeah. Well, I've been. Basically, there was one experience a long time ago when I realized I need to know how to use a CLI editor for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I remember, like, the basics, like how you jump between words and stuff like that, because I've needed to use it as well. Yeah. But what I don't do is write large amounts of code in Vim anymore. I tried that in college, and I was like, this isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an acquired. I mean, it takes a long time to even be able to be effective at all with Vim. But yeah, anyway, that's it. It looks like shit, and that's kind of a byproduct of me not caring so much, and that's my fault. So
yeah, I mean, I guess. Kind of like to go along with this, are you opposed to, like, me going through and starting to switch some stuff over to TypeScript, or are you like, nah, don't do that?
I'm not opposed. I think it makes sense in a small utility library like Homegames Common would be a good candidate if Homegames Common weren't a dumpster fire of utilities and copied and pasted code and garbage. Like, TypeScript is good when something can be converted, like a self-contained unit of work can be converted
like Squish.
Exactly.
Yeah, see, that was what I was going to start with, is we could convert Squish, then web. I don't know if we can convert web.
You do TypeScript, like, would you do some sort of transpile to just...
Yeah, TypeScript you should transpile, yeah. We could figure that out, yeah.
Yeah.
Transpile it down and then run the JS files that it makes.
Adding Babel to our workflow or whatever made me want to die, but that's okay.
Well, this is the thing, is, like, we have talked at great length about how we don't like reliance on libraries. TypeScript is heavy. Like, I use it at work. It's not like 1 meg. It's like 6, I think.
So, like, if you're a developer and you need to install the tools to write stuff, I don't really think it's a problem for, like, if you're a developer, you have maybe an IDE, you have maybe a bunch of other tools that make your whole thing, like, chunky. You need things to do what you do.
Yeah.
But what was I trying to say? What am I trying to say? I was in the middle of a point, and I was making a great point, and then I forgot it.
Was it the difference in, like, what the developer would want and the end user would want?
Oh, yes. The end users things should be quick and light and fast, and there shouldn't be a whole bunch of bullshit in it. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you and I should find things for convenience and the whole balance of that whole thing. But yeah, it's not a big deal if ultimately it makes sense. I just don't want to add, like, a 40 megabyte library, so when someone loads index.html, when client.js loads, it's like a 5-second network request. Like, that's the shit that people talk about.
Yeah, I mean, TypeScript transpiles down to JavaScript, so yeah. I think the end user wouldn't see a difference. It's just developers would have type safety, and they would know, like, this function requires these things that need to be in this format. Otherwise, it'd be like XD, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, but you don't need React for a single page, like index.html or whatever most of the time. But, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that totally makes sense. I'd be down to see what Squish looks like with TypeScript. Some good tests and stuff like that. We have tests in there. It's just that they're kind of a mess. So that would be a good self-contained thing while I'm still fucking around with everything else, which is pretty much what I'm going to talk about for my thing this week. But
okay, yeah. I mean, I can start on that. This is just like some tangentially. My former lead, who never turned on his linter, so his code would just continuously, like, mess us up. So that's why I was asked about the linter. But then I've also been working more in TypeScript for work, so it's like I'm getting more comfortable with it. So I can actually, like, do it and do it well, as opposed to just like everything is now just a TS file and everything's marked as any type. So.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do think it's a right move in the long run to move to TypeScript eventually. So it would be smart for me to start writing new things in TypeScript, like my Locker service or whatever, but it's not that big of a deal to convert it over, and I don't want to start learning something right now while I'm juggling shit. So yeah.
I've also felt like it's easier when you have an example.
Yes.
Like how do you type an array of objects, or like how do you type an object of arrays and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So yeah, those things I think having an example for would be nicer, because basically I have to type like what I was looking at was the game node stuff, and I was like out of the brain, I have no idea what's supposed to go into these.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I don't know. So like I would have to go and look and figure it out. So.
Yeah, people shit on Java because of like the whatever abstract class factory generator or whatever the fuck. That's like a meme for sure, but there is something very nice about saying, here is my component on an interface level. I'm not talking about what it does. Here's an interface, talks to this interface of this type with these methods, and it's like, here's a contract of what your code's going to do before anything's written. Like, that shit is so cool. So having the types and the classes and the whatever, like, you know, it's kind of the opposite of what JavaScript is, but
I mean, so for me, it's I like untyped things. Just personally, I don't like writing with types, but after working with it, I find other people understand your code better when they're like, what is this argument? And then it's not just a name, it's like it's an array of ints. Like, it has to be an array of numbers. If you send me anything else in the sim, it's just gonna die.
Yeah.
So like that is nice. I don't like Java because of how verbose it is, right? Like the difference between saying like give me an array, an arbitrarily sized array in JavaScript, you can't even do that as far as I know in Java. You'd have to ask for an array list.
You can declare an array of a fixed type and then like instantiate it there. You can say like int whatever.
Yeah, but you have to give it a size. You have to say like, I want it to be this long, don't you?
Yeah, I think you can. I don't know if like Kotlin might provide some sort of nice utilities around that.
Kotlin, I don't know much about Kotlin.
But Kotlin's not so verbose. Anyway, I enjoy Kotlin a lot. I was writing it over the past year or so, and like I missed typed languages a bit. So yeah. Anyway.
It makes sense.
We'll do TypeScript.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll add that to the old docket. And then the last some of the other things I noticed was our README for web is not correct.
Probably not. Yeah.
I was like trying to start it after pulling the most recent stuff down, and I was like, it don't start though. And then I read through the README, and it was like node app _ server.js. I was like, I don't even know if there's a file called app server.js anymore.
No, I think it's index now.
Yeah, it's now index.js. So you have to run node, or you run
npm run start.
npm start. Yeah, npm run start.
I added a script for it, but yeah, it's like READMEs are cool. And I was like, when I wrote that README, I was really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like motivated in that moment to write documentation. I had this thing where I was just like, I just want to write about home games and not work on it. Mm-hmm. And that felt perfect to just do documentation. And I thought it was really good at the time because it was in depth enough to be helpful, but not sue whatever. And I was happy with it. But the thing is, you have to maintain that shit the same way that you maintain the code. Mm-hmm. And actually having in-depth, helpful at the time documentation actually hurts more, because it might create frustration for someone who's like, well, fuck you, you're like wrong. Instead of just you didn't say anything, it's that you said something that was wrong. Yeah. Which is worse. Mm-hmm. So there's like a balancing thing there. I don't want to write documentation for a while. That's like a thing I've decided. It just doesn't feel like the most valuable.
Okay. I'll update the README then.
Yeah, sure, feel free. That'd be helpful if you take the old shit and then see what's broken and add to it or fix it or whatever. Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, I guess the thing I noticed, and I don't actually know if Vim gives you this utility, but we also have like imports into functions, like requiring like files and stuff like that we don't use.
Unused imports.
Yeah, unused imports and unused variables.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I was like, I should probably like.
I think the linter catches that.
The linter. I don't know if the linter does, because my VS Code just told me that without a linting error.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But either way, like those things make it hard for everyone who's not me this is like, I guess, a good summary. In the grand scheme of the people who the people who receive the effort that I've been putting in, most of it's me. Mm-hmm. The next person up is you, and there's not much else after. Mm-hmm. So in terms of like, who cares? Me and you. And it's not that much work to transfer knowledge just to you without having to be like, let's build up this whole thing in case someone walks into this conversation and everything's ready for them. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, we're like, it's kind of like the thing I talked about, talking about the thing versus building the thing. It's like, what are you doing, you know? Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, those are just some of the things that I noticed while I was working this past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
it's been a while since I checked out Master. I think one of the other things that tripped me up is that I think all of our stuff is Master except for
the newer
Core,
ones are Main.
Which is Main. Yeah, I was like, we might want to standardize that also. I don't remember if GitHub gives you nice tools for it, but I think they do.
I imagine we would just, go to Master, git checkout B Main, push Main, and then set Main your default in GitHub. It'd be like a pain in the ass, but
I actually think like GitHub's website might have a tool for it because I think they were pushing for everyone to rename from Master to Main. Yeah. So I think they made a tool that makes it easy, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but that's another weird little thing. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I've had these things on a ever growing backlog of like you can go back October, and I was on this thing talking about like, I want to go back and rewrite that and clean that up and fix this and make it nicer. And it's like, yes, I'm still gonna do that, but the priority list is just like things keep getting put on top of it, and it's really hard to convince myself like on a Saturday, like, well, I could go and build this new thing that we need, especially talking about the stuff on the podcast. Like I could talk about refactoring, or I could talk about the locker service. It's like, what's the most valuable? And it's hard as fuck because I've never done any sort of project management in my life. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what? It might work out better if you were like the cutting edge, like here's the new stuff. And then as I went through and had to use something, I was like, all right, let's clean this up a little bit so it's a little bit easier for a regular uneducated person to use. Because sometimes I look through your code and I'm like, I see the brilliance of this, but I don't understand the mechanics of it.
That's the thing is like, you can just write shitty code, and if you do it confidently, people are like, this man's brilliant.
The thing is, I know you're very good at writing code, though. So when I look at your code, sometimes I'm like, am I wrong? Am I wrong? Is this import actually meaningful? But my VS Code is telling me it doesn't do anything. And then I go look at it, I'm like, no, I think Joseph just imported everything. And then Squish.js was where I noticed that, actually. You have like something called like an internal game node import, but then it doesn't go anywhere. And I was like, if I remove that, is that like break like Webpack for? But I didn't. So I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I forget why I did that. I write code the way that I speak. Like, the Michael Scott, The Office quote, where like I open my mouth and I kind of start talking before I know where the sentence is going to end, basically.
Oh, I don't know anything about The Office, but that is a funny quote.
The essence of it is that I speak before I know what I'm saying, which kind of hurts me a lot in my life for a lot of reasons. But I also write code that way, which is like I have an idea and I think, okay, in this moment, I know the whole thing in my head. I know what needs to talk to what and what needs to go where. I'm just going to start going, and I just go off on these tangents. And I go on a tangent to a tangent to a tangent, and then I forget what I'm talking about, and I have unused imports, and it's all just like fucking stupid. But I get it. People don't, Anyway, it just makes it hard for everybody. And it's, like I said, it's been on a thing for me to come back to it. I think probably by the end of the year, we'll have like a nicer put together version of what we have right now.
Okay. Yeah. It's just funny to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like everything I had. It was just, most of it was just kind of poking fun, but hopefully playfully. I'm not like saying you're bad or something like that.
I feel like
just
shit
giving
now.
You a hard time.
Well, my thing this week was essentially, I was on vacation for a week, so I didn't do a whole lot for that 1 week.
This man, I didn't do a whole lot this week. His notes compared to my notes.
Brother, I felt, okay, just for some background, a little inside baseball. Basically, I had worked on the locker service a little bit, and I had started working on an infrastructure overview diagram. because I've been working on some infrastructure changes for the Home Dome stuff, for the certifier stuff that I was doing way before, and then now I have this locker service. And I was just thinking I need to have a good way to show how all these pieces fit together. And that was it. My whole notes were just locker and infrastructure overview. And this morning at like 8, I knew we were leaving. Sanovi and I were going somewhere at 10. So I was like, well, I have 2 hours. And so I tried this new thing where side by side, I put up the show notes with what I was doing. And basically my like developer notes in my head, the things I was thinking, I would put them in here. So this looks more impressive, but really this isn't just me writing while I was working.
So what you're telling me is you documented in the podcast notes.
Yeah, documenting like the things in my head, basically, the thought processes. So first, I'll just mention back to my infrastructure overview. One change I need to make for the way that I handle things now, basically everything is kind of synchronous. One component tells another thing that it needs a thing, other component will do that and then give it back. It's handled like that. But we do have some types of work that have kind of emerged in this publishing workflow and game playing system that we made that have made that a little bit more complex and added some asynchronous actions. And the two of those that I can think of that are kind of the major ones are certificate generation, which could potentially take a while because there's a finite way that we can process those. It's like it could take time and whatever, and it might not be ready immediately. And the other one is Home Dome, where you're sending off a request basically to validate this game, and we can't expect that to happen right then immediately every time, and it'll take time, and so it should be a task basically that we can track throughout the system. And so I realized I needed essentially a way to queue requests, and so these other kind of worker components can just process tasks off of this queue whenever they feel like it, whenever they see fit, as opposed to just taking all requests as they come in. So one of the things I'm going to do there is add like this kind of pattern of the certifier requests and the Home Dome requests to process either a game publish action or a give me a new certificate as a home games user action. When either of those happen, it'll get put into a queue, and then there's one EC2 instance on kind of the end of that, which is just pulling the queue, saying, do you have any work for me? I'm going to do something. Do you have any work for me? I'm going to do something. And we've talked about it before, but there's some specifics about why it needs to be an actual EC2 instance that's running these two services specifically. And it's kind of different to scale them out and different weird little things, but in the moment that feels like the best way to do it. Put a queue and have the EC2 instance just pull the work, and then do that. When that number of people making those requests grows, that'll be a problem, and we'll have to figure some stuff out. But I think at the time that's fine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm going to use Amazon SQS, simple queue service, to do that. I have a little bit of experience with that before. There's two types of queues. There's they call it like a standard queue, and there's a FIFO queue, in computer science.
First out.
Yeah, there's in data structures, a queue is essentially a line, first in, first out. First person in is the first person out. Last person in is last person out, as opposed to a stack, which is opposite. Anyway, a queue is a FIFO queue, so I don't know what the hell the differentiation is between a queue and a FIFO queue.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that is to say, we've introduced queues, or I'm introducing queues into our infrastructure for these two components.
Is it that their simple queue is actually like a priority queue?
I don't know. It just says, I think their thing is that it guarantees at least once delivery, which I think means that if I have a message in a queue, at least one consumer of the queue will see it, but that means it's possible that more than one will see it. So then you can have a duplicate. I guess if it's like, I'm putting this thing in a queue, it doesn't matter if it's repeated or if it's like, whatever, it's not high priority that you process it in this order. Ordering is another thing. In a FIFO queue, the ordering is maintained. Anyway, I don't know enough about it to like really talk in depth, but those are the two things, and I do have a queue, and I just need to kind of figure out the specifics of the messages, like what messages go in that queue, how they're tracked, how these tasks and things are tracked with states, and like your request failed on this time at this day, and blah blah blah, and building all that kind of stuff. But I thought it would be fun to do like a Candyland style infrastructure overview. Like, you know how Candyland, the board game, has like the very cartoony, whimsical looking like different things, and it's all just very visual.
Yeah.
Like, I think it'd be fun to do that, but for our infrastructure, where it's not a infrastructure diagram, because I fucking hate those. They're so unreadable to me. Or like, oh well, this component has an arrow to this one, and it sends an async, like whatever. It's like, no, piece, arrows. Like, that's my shit. I love that. So I want to do one of those for the infrastructure, and I'll do that eventually at some point as a form of documentation. But I want it to look cool.
To make a board game for document.
I don't know.
I'm joking.
No, I know there's ideas though. I have like, I want to do cool shit with our documentation in a way that's like not boring, because I hate documentation.
I think it's important for us to make documentation as least tedious as possible for people to read.
Yes.
It's one of my things with like Node's documentation is that it's dense.
But it's so helpful. It's like,
it's helpful, but it's dense.
You can Command F anything you'd want though.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. But yeah. Anyway, infrastructure. I just wanted to mention that. You have any questions or anything before I talk about Locker stuff?
I don't think so. I was gonna ask about that then. If on what you just said about the at least once thing.
Yeah.
Is it important for us that we don't double process certificates, or is it okay because there's already, like, after the first one's finished processing, the second one will be like, oh, it was already processed, so we're good to go.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of the basic versus the FIFO queue, but the one that we have for what I'm using is the FIFO queue, which is ordering is maintained, and I believe it's exactly once delivery or whatever.
Okay.
Like, you won't have the same message appear for two things, or I don't know. Anyway, FIFO queue, it should be fine. But you're right, we shouldn't be processing two certificates for the same person at a time. One, because you'd be wasting resources, and then two, just because it wouldn't work on the second one.
Yeah.
So we would want to avoid that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's less important though for like Home Dome, because Home Dome is static analysis and like our internal testing thing. So it might actually not be a bad idea if it happened 2 times.
Yeah, it would still be a waste of resources, and Home Dome can be scaled horizontally, I guess, where we have more hosts just reading from that queue. Mm-hmm. But the problem then becomes, say that you hate us and it's all open source, so you see how Home Dome works, and you see that it'll call this function on your game, and then you realize that you can just put a set timeout in that function in your game for 4 hours, and you block our entire deployment pipeline for 4 hours. You know what I mean? Like, we need ways to be smart about processing things off of that queue and not wasting resources, because in this very specific thing, our resources are literally one instance, and it's kind of work for us to scale it out. So we need to be smart about what work they do and limiting the work that they do. Yeah.
That makes sense. I got you.
But yeah, my next thing that I worked on was the Locker service that Yazeed and I had talked about before. So at its core, Locker, final name pending. The Locker is a service that lets you store and retrieve things. It doesn't have to be sensitive data, but it could. Right? Like, you could have it's essentially an environment variable service thing, where we're allowing users to say, this key corresponds to this value, and maybe this value is my Twitter API key or a Facebook API key or some other like integration that Homegames needs that Homegames does not provide out of the box, and I need to provide these things. Or maybe it's this is an open question, I think, for us to talk about, but should it be variables defined by us, like Homegames, us, say that, all caps Twitter _API _key is a valid environment variable, and now everyone can set that, and we maintain this list of what people set and use and access and whatever? Or is it an arbitrary key value store for games to just access?
Oh, interesting.
I think it should be both.
Yeah, honestly, I was like, does it have to be one? Because I was gonna say, like, there's some stuff that we want to like make sure that is exactly this. Otherwise, other things are gonna break.
Yes.
And there's stuff that's like your game might integrate with something that we don't know or
Yes.
care about,
Yes.
and so you can put it in there. Like you can put, like you could add in like what is it? You could add in like your credit card information if you wanted to, and then you could gamble with your friends if you wanted to make a game that allows gambling.
Holy shit.
We don't need that though.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be like, "What's your credit card number?" Like that's not something I'm really interested in. But like your Twitter key, it allows us then to have flexibility. Like other games can use that same key. We can say like, "Oh, this is their Twitter key. You want their Twitter key? Here is their Twitter key." You don't have to be like, did they call it like Twitter _ API _ key or Twitter key API, Twitter read API
Yeah.
key? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and yeah, so I think maybe it looks like something where it is an arbitrary key value store, but the systems that we have that write to it basically just check HG_ is like a reserved namespace. So we use those things for like Twitter API key because that would be standardized where we would know you are integrated with Twitter as opposed to you have a thing over here, like a value in a thing. But it would also allow for the value in a thing. For some developer to say that they want you to put in your fucking credit card and then you store it across your your config basically across all home game stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't think we like disagree at all on that.
No, yeah, I was concerned if you were gonna be like, honestly, I'll be real with you. I thought you were gonna say we should make it arbitrary, and I was like, I think there's some reserved things that we're gonna want. Wasn't even my argument, but since we're on the same page, it's okay.
That's too laissez-faire even for me, you know. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. We should have a little bit of the reservation in there, but generally it should just be available for people. But that's what Locker is. Now, what is it? How is it actually used? Is kind of a bit of a fuzzier thing in my mind. At the moment, I have two JS files. One of them is like a sample application that uses the Locker, and the other is the Locker. So from the application side, it has access to three methods. One is init, like initialize the Locker. The second is set, and the third is get. That's it. That's all it can do. And setting a value obviously says, set key to value, and then get is give me key, and it'll give you value. What was I going to say? Fuck. I just had something good. Oh, anyway. The initialization stuff basically is what's your passcode, because that's the passcode that you use to encrypt all your data, because all this is the stuff we talked about last time. If you put in your credit card information into this system that we build, thank you so much for trusting us with that. I love that, but holy shit, I never want access to your credit card.
Yeah.
Ever in my life.
Well.
All right, put that shit into like send me $10. Don't give me your whole credit card,
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want that ever, because even if I'm the best dude in the world and I don't want to fuck you over and I don't want to read your shit, someone can get my AWS password and go to my DynamoDB table and it's over for everyone, So what this ended up being is a service that at the moment it's DynamoDB. This service will just write user ID, config key. Those are like, that's the key in total, the primary key and the sorting key. And then the value is just whatever value you have, but encrypted with your passcode and base64 encoded. So it's just like a garbage string that we store in the thing, so people couldn't read it if they wanted to, unless they knew your passcode. So that initialization method that you call on the Locker, at the moment, just makes the Locker prompt in the CLI, what's your passcode? Right? So you put in ABC, and it's like, cool. Now that Locker in memory is holding that value, and the set and get access that when retrieving and writing things. So when you write something, the Locker will say, let's encrypt that with the key that you just gave us, and then let's base64 encode that, and then write that off to Dynamo. And when you try to retrieve something from Dynamo, it says, okay, this is a base64 value. I'm going to decode it from base64 to ASCII, and then decrypt that with the same passphrase that you told me before. In this session, I'm just keeping it in memory. No one can access it from me. I don't write it to disk, none of that. And like I said, something just depends on this, something just uses this and can just set and get kind of arbitrary key values. And it works.
Nice.
But one of the kind of interesting things I was thinking of in terms of how to store it was basically I can have one giant JSON blob that has all of your config in it. Every option you have. So then the key is just your user ID. User ID Yazeed, give me his shit. As opposed to user ID Yazeed, key, tree. I want the tree key, was a confusing word, but you see what I mean. I want this value, or I want this thing for Yazeed, as opposed to I want all things for Yazeed. And I ended up going with this thing for Yazeed because I felt like it just felt like a good idea having them separated out, where if like for some reason your settings were corrupted, all of your shit would be corrupted and you would lose all settings as opposed to just the one that was fucked. We can restore to like a default state easier. It just felt right, and the data structure still allows me to get all of the things for Yazeed, and it allows me with constant constant speed, whatever, runtime, whatever, you get what I'm saying. Constant retrieval of the key of a certain config for Yazeed. So it's like still fast, it's still good, and seemed like the right way to go. But I had this question of, how do we know that you put in the right passcode? Because if you say that your passcode's ABC and you try to decrypt the data that we have stored for you with ABC, it's valid ASCII. We just don't know if it's right. Because if you said...
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, so like my thing is like Joseph, encrypt Joseph, and I'm encrypting it myself, and I just give it to you. You don't know what the fuck it's supposed to say. You give it back to me, and I decrypt it wrong, and it says like squares and shit.
Yeah,
that's valid. So I was thinking, how do we check that? And storing it in a large blob would actually have helped us, because we would be able to say, is it JSON? Like try to JSON parse this. Or we could have a test value in the JSON that's always a constant. So like HG sanity check is always set to the alphabet. And if we can always pull out that key and that value, then we know that everything else is good, because, you know, whatever. But anyway, all I'm going to do is just store it in a JSON blob in one record, where it's just like value and then thing. And if I can parse JSON out, then I know it's real.
Yeah. Okay. That works.
That's a lot of talking, but basically the locker stuff will happen and will work, and it's fairly simple.
So you're going to reverse the decision, and you're going to make it so that we just store everything as one chunk?
No, I'm storing everything as individual records.
Oh, okay. So everything is going to be a JSON chunk with like a sanity check part up to it.
No, so we don't actually need the sanity check. We just need, like, the format is the check. The fact that, like, okay, someone will take a value and give it to me, just the value. I take that value and I put it in a JSON object where the key is something arbitrary like value.
Oh, okay.
So the value is the actual value. I then base 64 encode that into a string and then encrypt that. So then in reverse, I reverse that. Base 64 encode the encrypted value.
Oh, okay.
So then on the other side of that, I base 64 decode, decrypt, JSON parse. And just the act of JSON parse working means that it worked, because it's a valid JSON format. It's not that I need a value in it, it's just that it is JSON still. And the chances of valid JSON coming out of an improperly decrypted thing is like super small.
Yeah. Except for that one poor soul who it works out perfectly for them.
Yeah, like the hardest to diagnose bug on earth.
They'll be like, yo, I got garbage for my Twitter API key.
Yeah. But yeah, that was like the challenge I thought of. I was like, oh fuck, how do we check against a password we don't know?
Yeah, I like that, because we don't ever pull a password out of whatever and be like, is this the right one? We just, does it work? Did it get you what you were asking for? Did you open the locker?
Yes. Yeah, and I really like, because like I was testing with it, and I have run node index.js. It'll put a value and then log it back out to the screen. But if you go to the DynamoDB table, garbage, unreadable fucking garbage, unless you know my passcode.
That's right.
ABC.
Hell yeah. I wonder if bigger companies also think this much about security.
Well, it's not that I'm thinking. It's not that I'm like. Obviously, I value security, but what I'm really after is the removal of responsibility for security. If I don't even have the shit, I can't be responsible when it is hacked. I don't have it. I can't do anything to hurt you. I don't have the shit.
Yeah.
I don't, So, yeah, I don't know.
I like it.
Thanks.
I like it. I have one more question on this then. So their passcode isn't the same passcode they use to log into home games.
Yeah, that's right. And that adds.
Or is it necessarily? It could be.
It could be. They could choose to make that same passcode for both, and I'm sure like most people would because that's how people work. And they wouldn't make a secondary code. But I was thinking about that in the shower this morning, and I was thinking, well, we could store a hash of their password, so it's not their actual password. It's like, you know how there's like the algorithms where you can generate a hash of a string, but you can't like decrypt it. You could just get like a.
Oh yeah, where you like lose the key to the, or you don't store the key for it.
Yeah, you don't have the value that thing originally was, but you have what that value corresponds to, and you can never reverse it with like our current whatever. So you would have a hashed version of your real password, which means that again, if someone got that, they wouldn't know your real password, and then we can use that to be your secret key on your locker stuff. We would then have an edge case there where if you change your password, we actually need to go and re-update everything in your locker with a new encryption key or whatever, which would be kind of strange. We would have to say, okay, well, you just changed your password. I'm going to go to your locker, decrypt everything that you have in there with your old one, re-encrypt everything with your new one, and then put it back in. Which is like a weird thing to do when you change your password. It just feels like a weird...
Do we not still have to do that?
No.
If they ever change their passcode for the locker?
Yeah, if they wanted to change their passcode, they would. That's a good point. I guess in my head they wouldn't change their passcode, but that's stupid. Yeah, we have this problem. I guess I'm just opposed to storing anything, even if it's derived from your password. Like,
I don't think we gain anything from you storing their hashed password, even if it's unretrievable to us, it is retrievable to somebody smarter than us.
Yeah, and then they can get a version that they can't read, actually. But, it's not a bad idea. I don't think it's like an actually bad idea. It just makes me uncomfortable because, again, I just don't like the potential for anything to happen.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we all sit and wait to die. Nothing happens. What was I going to say? No, but yeah, it would reduce the like cognitive burden on people because you would have one password and we would basically say, enter your home games password, take the hash of that, and then use that to decrypt all of your stuff instead of saying, well, what's your home games locker pin? But something in my head is telling me to keep them separate. I don't know if that's correct.
No, I think you should keep them separate because if we stored their hashed version,
yeah.
Like the whole idea of Locker, right, is to prevent people from making a game that just grabs their code, their keys, and sends it off to whatever, right?
It's to centralize that logic to reduce the ability for people to fuck you over.
Yes, yeah. So if we use their actual password, all somebody would need to do in a game is be able to figure out how to get access to that password, which we either store in memory, which you can find, or we store it in an actual file, which you can find.
Well, if you want to like find things in memory, you just like traverse all memory addresses with something and then just hope that one of the strings you get back is a password.
Yeah,
that's insane though. But I mean, if you're gonna go that hardcore, you're gonna fucking do it. I don't know, man.
But this way you can't do that because you have, unless you just guess that the password that we have is their password and that's true, which 90% of the time that is true. But if somebody was really concerned about that, they just set a different passcode on their locker. And now the only way to know whether it's the actual correct one is to read it, like to like write code that overlays the like prompt to get the passcode and then like to capture that information.
Yeah.
Which, because JavaScript's single threaded, you basically have to be like, here's the code that like Node uses to like create a new thread. And like you have all of that code down there, and that would be pretty easily findable. I think that the code to create a new thread is quite hefty. So
I think I lost you at some point. What are we avoiding by doing
basically, like you couldn't you couldn't just look in memory to find somebody's pass. If we were using their password, right? They would have. There is a way to get the password out of memory, so we couldn't store it in memory. So we have to prompt them anyway.
Well, if it was their password, wouldn't we just? You're saying like for the locker service, it's like, hey, what's your password? We'll store it in. We'll keep it in memory for this session.
Yeah.
And that plain text password is always findable. Wouldn't we just store the hash of it, not the actual password?
In memory?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter if they can find one of them.
Well, if you write something to find your password, then you have your password.
Yeah.
If you write something to find your hashed password, you still kind of have nothing.
Right, but they could know how we hashed it.
Yeah, but if you know how you can know how to hash it, but that's what I'm saying. Like the specific algorithm I'm talking about, you can't decrypt.
Oh, really? I did not know there was a way to hash them in a way that wasn't unhashable.
I think it's like SHA-56 encoding or whatever. Like you can't undo that or something. One of those where it's like I can take this string, turn it into that string, and you can never take that string back to this string. Yeah, I remember because I tried to do encryption and decryption with the shit I'm talking about, and then I went like 4 hours in, and it was like, oh, you can't decrypt that. And I was like, what the fuck is the point of this?
The only one I can think of is SHA-256.
That's what I said, SHA-256.
Isn't that the standard? Oh no, because you use AES like something, right?
Bro, I don't know what the fuck encryption is. I'm just.
I only know AES is one, and then the SHA-256. I've used SHA-256, but I've only ever done it to encrypt. I've never done it to pull it back. So
yeah, I guess what I'm saying. I guess I'm using encryption wrong. I'm saying encryption when I mean hash. It's just hashing a thing. And okay, like I turned ABC into $4.
Yeah.
If you just had $4, you wouldn't ever know it was ABC based off of however this was created.
Right. Okay. I see. Yeah. Right. Regardless, whether or not somebody smarter than us could figure out how to undo this, right? Basically, if we do prompt them to enter their passcode and their passcode is different than their password, you'd have no way as the game developer of getting that information. We basically lock you out of getting into their locker unless you're making a authenticated home games request.
Yes.
Which that's like the end goal of locker in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So we would eventually need a way to gate those requests, like. If someone tries to publish a game that accesses the locker, we need a way to say, actually, the game will not allow you to do that until I or someone approves the game to do that. Mm-hmm. You can't make requests to my shit until I've read your code, because what the fuck? Like, I don't know what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I think that'd be a part of the home dome, no? When we're looking over the code, we're like, this game cannot, we won't put this game up until we give it the green light.
I mean the specifically because the publishing workflow is put the game up, run it through Home Dome. If it passes Home Dome's automated checks, it is in a restricted state of being published, where I can share this game by ID with people, but I cannot list it on Home Games, the catalog or whatever. And if it makes network requests, they're actually blocked. Like the Home Games, like the tools will not allow it because it's not approved yet. Mm-hmm. So it's like a super restricted, not quite published state until we read the code. So yes, it is what it does, but I mean specifically the part that blocks the network request. Yeah.
Where like locker is automatically like no, you cannot even attempt to open this locker.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah, you're not a student at this school anymore. You can't open the locker.
Exactly. And one other thing, just that I thought of now, when someone is prompted for their PIN at the beginning of a session, or their security PIN for the locker, we would need to fetch something, hope that they have anything to find, and if they do, attempt to decrypt it with that same one. Otherwise, tell them it's wrong. That's the way that we know that what they said is wrong. We have to try to decrypt something with it, which means that they have to have something in the config with it, which creates some kind of weird edge cases about like checking if it's accurate. If they don't have anything there, we can't know if it's accurate.
I mean, when we go to fetch a record, though, we know if what was returned is empty, right? Like that didn't fetch anything.
Well, if you say, I'm Joseph, give me the value for X, and then there's nothing for X, that's different from I'm Joseph, and my passcode that I told you yesterday was ABC, and I didn't write anything with it. I tell you today that my passcode is DEF, this isn't stored anywhere, but I'm wrong, and you don't know I'm wrong. How do you tell me I'm wrong? I told you that my passcode today was different from what I said it as yesterday when I logged in. Mm-hmm. But I didn't write anything with my config yesterday. So I never really set that passcode.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's just like weird shit like that, but it doesn't really matter. It's just things to check for in code. Whatever.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. That sounds like something unit tests would figure out.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, it's just an interesting edge case. Like, I continue to be almost frustrated with how many things we need to keep building. Because, like, basically, last year I had this dream where all of my family would be at my nana's house on Christmas. And then I would bust out home games and they would all, like, get it finally. And for several reasons, that didn't happen last year. But in my head, that will happen Christmas this year. And I just want one specific cousin to be like, oh shit. I don't know why. But I'm trying to get there. But it's like, oh fuck, we got to worry about base 64 encoding encrypted blobs of data. And you know what I mean? It's just like so deep down a rabbit hole, and to come back and be like, well shit, I got 100 more rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay.
I get it.
It's okay.
That's the fun of it.
It is the fun of it. I very much enjoy doing this, even though,
Even though some days you want to tear your dry erase markers in half.
Definitely. Even though some days Yazeed forgets the audio equipment and I have to set up a wireless bullshit mic.
Okay.
Hopefully I sound okay this week. I don't know.
Okay. Listen, I remember that I was going to bring up a energy bar with me. And I didn't remember anything. Yeah, I have a one-track mind. I can only remember one thing at a time.
Thank God you remembered the kind bar for the podcast, not the audio interface, though.
Oh, my God. I was hungry.
I'm just fucking with you. That's all I had for this week. Do you have anything else? Questions, comments, concerns?
I got all my notes, right?
You hit the bullet points. It was linter, which we talked about. Issues with old README. Again, this is just Joseph is a piece of shit in a bullet point list. Clean up a little, model PR, but for real.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's everything.
Cool. Well, then in that case, thank you everybody for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan. He is Nytan on Bandcamp. That is Nytan, Nytan. Our website is homegames.io. Our Twitter is @homegamesio. And you can email us for the podcast to be featured on with your questions, comments, concerns. You also want to tell me I'm a piece of shit, go ahead and email us at podcast@homegames.io.
Or fill out the contact form on Homegames.io.
We have a contact form. I'm pretty proud of it. Use it. And whatever, we have nothing else, so we'll see.
That's right. I really hope we get some questions on the encryption stuff from somebody who's smarter than us, or somebody who's dumber than us, or just doesn't know as much as we do. I'm fine with any of those three options.
I think more realistically, it'll be a smarter version of us in a year, and we'll be like, remember when we didn't know shit?
That you're making a big assumption that by the end of this year I'll be smarter than I was this year.
I would hope you're smarter at the end of this year. Anyway, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you everybody for listening and or watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.